Hey, what's up, everybody? Here we are with another episode of the Dust2.us podcast slash show slash whatever. I am, as always, Joe Fanatic Cordali, erstwhile and beleaguered North American ambassador of Counter-Strike. Joining me is Mr. Alan Shakezullah Hardiman, currently a Bad News Bear. Bad News Bears, as we can see, the newest bear down there, bottom of the screen. And on the mic, that lovely sonorous voice coming at you from the ether out of nowhere is Cole Exner McHenry. So, Shakezullah, Exner, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Got my truly, got my boys. I'm
Very
ready to go.
nice. Doing well as well. I'm ready to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, for those gentlemen out there who have girlfriends, mine has very particular taste. She does not like passion fruit, so I'm drinking this as a form of sacrifice and duty. So let that be a lesson to all of you. Anyway, let's get right into it. So Shakezullah, obviously now we all love you as one of the shining in-game leader beacons in North America. After we have kind of like lost a lot of talent to the V-word game or just retirement and all that stuff. But obviously much earlier on, that's not kind of how you started off. So let's dive back kind of into how you started. So you really kind of, I don't know, came onto the scene like as a player for me, like at Intact or as part of Intact, right? I believe you attended like Frag maybe 12 with Intact, right? I want to say.
Oh, I might have been Frag 13. Not sure.
Yeah. But before that, you had kind of already dipped your you're kind of interesting because you dipped your toes into the coaching kind of pools as well as the playing pools, and you kind of alternated back and forth. So even before being with Intact as a player, you were coaching F1 Race Car Peak, which is my favorite team of all time. So kind of how did you get to that point in your career? We're talking about like late 2017, early 2018.
I'd pretty much just grinded normally in league ladders like everybody else does, and pretty much I had played 2 seasons of main where I had been the number 1 seed both seasons, and we had lost and not gotten promoted to MDL. So it was just very rough. And the last team that I had played on in that main season was one that kind of it just wasn't fun, and there was a lot of commotion and drama and stuff like that. And it just kind of killed a lot of like love I had for the game and the reason that I was playing. So that's kind of why I ended up taking a coaching stint. I had played with Koga on the fundamentals, and then he went to that F1 race car peak team, and so that's why I was brought along to coach with that team. Obviously, I coached with them for about 3 months or so. Kind of figured that it was not time for me to coach, and that it wasn't something that I was ready to fully invest my time in, because I would find myself wanting to, get into the server and play, or I would find myself itching to play pugs with them after scrims were done for the day. So I kind of knew that I still had the grind to come back and play. So when the opportunity presented itself for me to kind of, you know, come back and reform a team with Intact, I definitely jumped on that and did that.
Mm-hmm. And you were with Intact, I believe, for about like 8 months or so. Didn't have like I guess you guys won advanced, right? So that was pretty good. And that brought you up to Premier, where you finished fifth, eighth in the following season. So making playoffs your first season out of that. Talk about kind of that was like the highest level that you had played to kind of at that point. Talk about making that transition from advanced to, well, I guess MDL at that point in time.
Honestly, the transition wasn't that hard. A lot of people look at that and think that there's like a big skill gap, don't get me wrong, between the teams that come up, but you usually see that there's like 1 or 2 teams at the premier level that kind of come up and play at a decent level. And we had a lot of fundamentals, but I mean, if you also look at the players we had experienced players. We had Sponge who came in, who had finished second in a couple seasons of MDL. We had Caboose, who was a frag winner at the time, and he had played, playoffs multiple times. So the only kind of newcomers to the season were me and Swan, and we had Will Meister as well, who had played with Sword back in the day. So I mean, our group was still, a very talented and very experienced group when it came to MDO. It's not like we were a fresh team coming up. And I think that Swan and I also had just good characteristics coming in. We were working hard. We had a lot of scrims going on. We weren't characteristic because some of these teams where it was like maybe they'll make it or they didn't expect to make it. I mean, we were like a class above when it came to Premier. I think there was a tweet that came out that said we were the 3rd most dominant team that was ever an advanced behind Furia and Pain, I think it was. So like I said, we had a really good team, a lot of solid players, and we were just practicing, 5-6 hours a night, even when we weren't getting paid at all, and it paid off. Going to MDL, we didn't feel like there was definitely a level that we weren't at yet. I mean, in that season, I think Bad News Bears. It was like Furia was the clear number one. Bad News Bears finished next to them, and then there was like Luminosity and Singularity that beat us. I think the only match we really felt outclassed was that playoff match against Singularity. They were definitely a lot better than us at the time. But other than that, I mean, we felt like we could beat any of the teams, to get into playoffs. Like we felt like we had a chance to get third or fourth in Premier, and that we had a lot of room to grow from there. So.
Mhm. Excellent segue into the next portion of your history here, because you mentioned Singularity there, and lo and behold, the Intact project. I believe the org dropped you guys. You spent 2 days as Chris and the boys, aka Chris Swan and the boys, and then you link up with Singularity, that Singularity project, as a trial. And you would eventually go on to become a full member within like about a week or so, and you would spend the bulk of the rest of the year as part of that roster. That roster obviously, like most notably now, had pieces that would go on to join ATK, which would eventually become Extra Salt, Cloud9, all this stuff. So once again, like, how did you wind up linking up with like that Singularity roster, and what was like the ride like with that team in like mid to late 2019?
They pretty much just messaged me after they had eliminated us in playoffs and kind of let me know there's something that kind of happened internally within the team, and so they were looking to remove one of the players, and they asked if they were interested in bringing me in because they thought I was one of the only IGLs in the scene that they could bring in that could kind of compete with them and call for them. So they pretty much just messaged me, and I was down to join. I mean, Intact wasn't really paying us, so Singularity was like my first official org. Obviously, we were going to Copenhagen games at the time as well, so that was big for me, just being a player that never played really at LAN before, other than local LANs. So there was just a lot of promise that was kind of going into Singularity. And obviously, it was just a talented team. Like I said, we felt like in the playoff game we were class above. So when I got offered to join them, it was like, okay, I get an official org. I get players that have been here and I think are really good. And so it was just a great opportunity for me to kind of come in and dip my toes into the scene. They had qualified for ECS back when it was a thing. And so again, that was like my first time that I got to play against what I would say like pro level teams consistently. The quality of the scrims that we got was a step above what we got on Intact. The competitions that we were playing in, we'd make it farther, we'd play better teams. And so I really got to sit there and play, MIBR and NRG and EG and Liquid and all these teams. And I had never really gotten that opportunity before. So it was pretty much the chance for me to figure out if I was capable of playing at this level. It was a chance for me to, see if I could work hard and if I could call at a level that was sufficient at a pro level. So it was pretty much just a good testing level for me, or pretty much a testing place for me. It's just a pro
Yeah.
level. So
Yeah, when you look at like some of the people that you played alongside in that like time of your career, obviously you have Floppy, you have Ryan, OC, MLTM, Hydrex, who I still refuse to call Cam. He will always be Hydrex to me. Uh, um, what do you think of I guess like of those players and like where they are now? Obviously, some of them are still in CS, some of them are not. Some of them are taking very different paths in CS than they were at the time.
I mean, I miss it a lot. I think that Singularity is one of my biggest regrets because I think I could have worked a lot harder and done a lot more. Obviously, when you look at OC with the level that he's at right now is insane, and Floppy obviously wanted to have a good career. A lot of people credit me with like developing OC or Floppy, but I don't think that I really did a lot for them. In all honesty, I think that most of that credit should go to GT, if not all of it. And so I think that Singularity was a learning time for me, and I didn't utilize it fully, but I did learn a lot. And I just feel like if I had had the chance to go back and slot into that team like right now, I could have done so much more for them. I could have helped them in just tons of ways, and I think we'd be a really good team, if not one of the best teams to North America right now, even with that same roster that we had back then.
Mhm.
The team chemistry was just insane. We obviously had a team house that we went out to in Chicago, and so there was a lot of the pieces there for us to be a strong team. And I mean, we made MDL finals. We could have won. We made the minor. So there was definitely a lot of pieces there that we had chances to, go to that next level. But again, I don't think I was at a point in my career where I was ready to take that team to the next level, which is just unfortunate.
Mhm. Singularity was a bit interesting as well because it was one of the rare times when you see a non North American organization picking up an NA team. So how did that dynamic work out between you and Singularity and Atley, the owner?
I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, Ale was always ready and always, there to talk to us whenever we need anything. So he was very hands-on, and I didn't feel like there was much of an issue there with anything. Yeah, I don't think that there was anything really with it being Danish or anything. I mean, they obviously got us into Copenhagen games, which was huge, but other than that, I would say it's no different than any of the North American teams that I've been a part of.
Mhm. Cool. So after Singularity, you actually had like a period of inactivity at the end of Singularity, and then you once again put your coaching hat on and linked up with Ben's anime team, who would then go on to be signed by Chaos. So once again, like now you're actually talking about dealing with like players of a completely different caliber than you really have ever worked with before, right? You have Steel. I believe you overlapped with Smuya as well while he was there. Yeah.
I did.
So once again, like this one, you had some experience with Ben Lee before, but and I guess Hydrex, but other than that, kind of a whole new cast of characters for you going to the Chaos Project. So again, like what about that point in your life made you want to kind of step back from playing to try the coaching thing again? How did you link up with those guys? What was it just like working with the team during that period?
It was pretty much Cam came to me during the house before we all moved out, when we lost EPL relegation, and pretty much told me that Steele was interested in making a project and that he was interested in having me as a coach. Steele had played a couple FPL games with me and was impressed by the communication or the demeanor that I had, and
Mhm,
so and any org or I guess Chaos that wanted to pick up as well also wanted an IGL that could like play at a fairly decent level. That if I
mhm,
needed to step in and play for them at whatever major, that I could do so at a pretty adequate level
mhm,
instead of just having it be pretty much a null tournament. They wanted the chance to get stickers or whatever.
mhm,
So that was kind of the reason that I was asked to coach that team. And I just viewed it as a really good opportunity because, like I said, I had struggled a little bit in terms of like fragging. I had struggled a little bit in terms of my system. And so I kind of was like, this is a great opportunity for me to sit behind and learn from Steele and figure out, what is the way he operates? What are the things that make him different from me in terms of calling? What are the things that I can adjust in my own approach that he does? And so again, I just got a long time to sit there and really be like, oh, this is how Steel operates, and these are things that I can do better and take back to my next team. And so again, that's just kind of what I did for the next 4 to 5 months. And I also gave coaching again a very legitimate shake and did a lot of like the research and the analysts and stuff and just kind of dip my toes in that like way more than I had done in F1 because in F1 Race Car Peak I didn't really have the direction, whereas Steele knew exactly what he wanted from me. He knew, what to look for, what his docs wanted to look like and stuff like that. So again, it just gave me a very real understanding of what a top level IGL is going to bring and what he expects from coaches, how he's going to run practice, and all that stuff. And that just allowed me to kind of transition how I approach the game and how I approach my teams and make them, better.
Is there anything like concrete in the server that you can point to that you like specifically picked up during that period, like from Steel specifically, or even just any of the other kind of players on that, like just that experience?
I mean, a lot of it just came down to his approach in terms of like having set like docs or stuff like that, having things that we could reference, making sure that you're recording scrims so that you can go back and you can listen to your comms or that you can do demo review. I had never really done a lot of like demo review with my previous teams, and that's
Mhm,
something that kind of opened me up is like, hey, you don't need to scrim as much, like, or hey, we should focus our scrims on doing certain things as opposed to just like playing it to win, and making sure that the mix of those things was very good and not just a a very repetitive cycle of okay, we're gonna get on, we're gonna do some server time, we're gonna scrim. There was a good mix of everything, and so mostly just stuff like that. Also, it kind of reinforced some ideas that I had in terms of the game of players being able to read the game for themselves and kind of how to set that up and where to give freedom and where to not. So that was kind of things that he taught me, and I
mhm.
definitely invaluable in terms of my growth as an IGL player.
Cool. Um, so you're in chaos for about, I guess, 3 months. And then, you take off your coaching hat, put your playing hat back on again. You're replaced by the legendary Matthew MCE Elmore as coach of chaos. And you kind of hop over to Triumph to kind of lead up that project. Um, So was that once again, was that like a change that was initiated by you? Was that a change that was initiated by the team and then just kind of you found a landing spot? How, like, what was that sequence of events?
No, I was removed from the team as the head coach. They wanted to see if I was interested in being an analyst because most of the work that I had done for them was more of the analyst side.
Mhm.
And so they asked me if I wanted to do that, but I declined. It was mostly because they were moving to apartments in Arizona, and I was going to school part time, and I thought that I could do both. But obviously, they wanted somebody that would be there at the facilities and be there full time. And I just wanted to again like kind of do school part time and make sure that that was an avenue because I thought I could do both sufficiently. And I could have done analyst work as well as gone to school, but I just decided that I wanted to go back and play again. And I thought that the opportunity that I had at Triumph was definitely one that I couldn't pass up. You know, MC is somebody that I had talked to, especially at that Frag, is where I really had developed a connection with him and talked to him a lot. And we had messaged each other over the course of a year or whatever. And so he had told me about the Triumph project, and I think Voltage ended up messaging me, and we were able to put something together there, and it was a pretty smooth transition.
Yeah, MC is a great guy, just a giant teddy bear. Can't do enough. Can't say enough nice things about him, and he can't do enough nice things for anyone that he's kind of ran into randomly. So I have stance. So shout outs to Matt over in the V game. Um, okay, so you make the move over to Triumph. Um, a few months into the project, you come second, I believe, in the EPL NA qualifier. So that's all well and good. And then you go on like a pretty good run of form, coming in second in a lot of like smaller cups and whatnot. And really, like the big thing is winning Premier Season 33 to gain promotion to Pro League. So that all transpired over the course of about 7 months. So, kind of same broken record question. What was that period of your career like working with the pieces that you had, building that team up from entering it?
I mean, a lot of the pieces were there. Again, it's kind of one of those things where a lot of people give me credit for like working up Graham, and I think that I did help Graham a lot, and he obviously fit into my system really well. But he did have a lot of things there where he'd worked with MC for a long time, and
Mhm.
his work and drive to be one of the best was unmatched. He was doing 1,000 kills a day. He was doing extra stuff outside of the server. A lot of times when I told him he needed to do something, there was no needing to repeat it. He would get it instantly, or he would just have so much skill that it would kind of make up for it. So again, like I think that I helped him a lot, and I definitely did things that improved him as a player. But he put in the work, and he did a lot of things that made him, a clear cut above. And so it was pretty easy, in all honesty, because we had a team that was very like the chemistry was very natural. Obviously, at the beginning we had Voltage, and he was really close with Grim, and then they had played with Spongy for a while, and so the three of them between Spongy, Voltage, and Grim had a really tight chemistry group. And then I was close with Spongy, so everything was like pretty good within the team. And then when Voltage went to Chaos and we ended up cutting Asuna, we brought in Curry and Junior. And again, there was just like no real problems with anything. Junior fit really easily in the team. Again, everything that I wanted him to do, he worked really hard. There was no having to repeat myself, having to make sure that he understood it. He worked very hard. Same kind of philosophy, same kind of mindset as Grim, where he just outworked people and became a step above everybody else by just working harder. Curry was super selfless, and so the team was just one that I don't know if you can like find a five like that again. I think that if we had stuck together as a five again, we'd be one of the best teams in North America right now. I think we would have been similar to Chaos. I think we would have been, you know, around where Extra Salt is right now, maybe even better than they are right now. And so I'm just like very sad that that team wasn't able to stick together. I mean, we had Graham and Junior. They're both, on
Yeah.
top 10 teams
Yeah,
in the
Yeah.
for
world
sure.
now. Like, I don't think that's like an outlandish claim. And if we had the time to get together, I mean, we were competing against top teams. And even if you look at that blast, I mean, we threw a lot of those games. Our biggest problem was closing out games. I mean, we were playing these teams close, we were beating them. And if we had been able to find that next level, I mean, we would have been, I think, easily a top 20 team in the world. So
Mhm. Obviously, like the backdrop of all of this is like, you join Triumph in February of 2020, and a month later, boom, COVID happens. So, like, what was the impact on that to that project, and obviously everyone's dealing with the same thing, right? So it's not extraordinary circumstances in that regard. But yeah, do you feel like that kind of impacted things in a negative way?
I actually think that COVID impacted things in an extremely positive way
Okay.
for tier 2 and A. Not specifically for the top teams. I think that obviously they weren't getting to play as lands. They weren't getting to do as much. But I mean, we were in every single top event in North America. And I don't think we would have had that opportunity had lands come around. Those events would have been lands in Europe, and we would have been playing the closed qualifier against NA teams. And, maybe we would have qualified for a couple. But I mean, we got to sit here and consistently scrim and play against the top teams in North America, which, even back then, it was a good scene. I mean, there was Gen G, there was 100 Thieves. It wasn't the scene that kind of collapsed, I would say, toward the January of 2021 is mostly when it kind of started to come down. But there was a lot of good teams, and so again, we definitely reaped the benefit because we were kind of the last team that slotted into a lot of these qualifiers. And then when we played well, we continued to get the invites and we continued to, get the opportunities to play. So, like I said, it was a good thing for us that COVID happened, and obviously COVID in itself is not good that it happened, but the impact on us as players, we definitely reaped the benefit of that in terms of just experience and I'd say like chemistry.
That's actually like a really interesting take. I've never like considered it from that perspective. So that's like pretty cool to hear. Do you feel like how is there a way to replicate the effects that you're talking about of COVID and carry those forward even, as we move towards a post-COVID world, right? Like more exposure for teams of that level, more events, like more and higher tier scrim partners. Is there a way to like, force those things to happen, or do you think it's just like a consequence of the times that will kind of be uh, will come and go?
I mean, I don't think so anymore because the amount of elite NA teams has diminished significantly. So I don't know if we can really replicate that kind of success. I mean, I think that a lot of events are going to be in Europe kind of while COVID. I mean, actually, a lot of events might be in North America considering how many, like our vaccination rate and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But we are a country that tends to have more stricter rules when it comes to stuff like this. Like I know a lot of the Brazilians are not able to get into North America right now. They're having to play these events from Mexico. So
Mhm.
depending on what happens, I mean, I think a lot of like events will happen in Europe, but I think that teams will benefit immensely from, if there are events, the European teams coming back and playing because that is the stuff that will kind of replete or not replete, like fill up the scrims. Like we are having a lot of tough times getting scrims right now, even on Bad News Bears, and so like we kind of need more teams here, and we need more elite level teams because the scrim quality needs to go up. And in general, just getting scrims every single day needs to be something that you can do. Like I know that Gambit, talked about one of the reasons that they're really good right now is they played like 6 scrims a day, and they were grinding like 10 hours a day. That is just not an option for us right now. Like we could not get 6 scrims if we tried,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so
At least not six high caliber scrims, right? Like
I
you
mean,
could,
definitely not high caliber, but we probably couldn't even get 6 scrims if we tried.
Mm.
Maybe
mhm,
if we wanted to play like advanced teams or something, I'm sure we could. But
right,
again, I don't know. There's a certain level of like, can you get your team to focus on that? Can you get your team to get something out of that scrim? And at the same time, is the team doing anything that challenges you, you know, in the game? Like, if you just impose your will on another team every single game, you're not really learning anything from it.
right, yeah, cool. So just to close out our little triumph arc here, so towards I'm looking at the roster here, right? And there's one, two, three, four, maybe even six people that left the Triumph roster and wound up in the V game. And then, also just a bunch of other roster changes that happened during your tenure. So, kind of in like the back half of time with Triumph, what was going on in, like the Cooper B Wills era and kind of around there? Like what was the situation like in the team?
I mean, we just didn't have a lot of success as a team, and I just don't think we ever hit a point where we were very happy with kind of the results that we were getting and stuff. I know we obviously got like second in MDL and stuff, but it just again, I don't feel like we improved a lot every day, and it was just a very frustrating situation, I think, for everybody because there were obviously pieces there that made a lot of sense and that I think have a lot of potential. But I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't know if the core was one that meshed well together. I mean, and again, we just didn't really have the results. So at the end, it was kind of like nothing was ever personal. Like I don't think we had any issues with anybody, and it was like a very graceful ending, I'd say. But we just kind of all accepted that, we just are not getting the wins that we think we should be getting. We're not improving in the way that we should be, and I just thought that the way I was calling just might not have been right for those guys. So like I said, it was like nothing personal, and things ended very easy with no bad blood or anything. But it was definitely just like frustrating because we put in a lot of effort and we would have good talks, and I felt like we just ran into a lot of the same walls that we were running into in terms of like improving or the mistakes that we'd make in the game.
Uh,
Yeah.
If
Oh,
I
go
could,
ahead, Cole.
yeah, I was gonna ask like the one like real note that I think from that second place finish in your playoff run was that you were able to 2-0 Bad News Bears in that upper bracket, but then you guys couldn't win a map on the lower bracket or the grand finals. So was there like a little bit of like a choking issue, or is that just Bad News Bears kind of stepping up their game for the finals?
Well, we won. Or the finals ended up going 3-2. We ended up winning Train against them. But
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if we had closed out Nuke, which was very close, we could have ultimately won the series. But I think that Nuke and Train were pretty much the only maps I would have clearly said that we had on them. Dust 2 was pretty 50-50, and then I think they were better than us at most of the other maps.
Yeah.
So I mean, we definitely had an opportunity to beat them. And like I said, if we had closed out Nuke, I think we would have won. I mean, well, we would have won because it would have been 3-2
Yeah.
or 3-1. But I mean, I don't know, that was pretty much like the only shining light within the whole thing. I just think that again, we didn't like mesh well, and there was a lot of things that we did in playoffs, like where we didn't really run things that we had practiced going up to, or like for the few months leading up, we didn't really run the things that we had practiced. We mostly just created like a game plan for each series and then ran that game plan. So it's not like if we had won, we would have had things that had transitioned over like to the next event that we played. It would have just been like, okay, we created our plan that we were going to run against Bad News Bears and counter Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
And it would have only worked in the future for that team. And so, I don't know if it would have been good overall, even if we had qualified, to be honest, because
Yeah.
a lot of people view MDL as like, okay, you want to make EPL, right?
Yeah.
But like, that's not the goal of any team that is trying to qualify. Like your goal is to make EPL and be competitive. Your
Right.
goal is to, start to get invited to tournaments. Like winning MDL and becoming an EPL team is like nothing of note. If you're just going to sit there and you're going to go and get eliminated and come back, and then you're just going to have to play another season of MDL.
Kind of like Team
So,
One in this sense. Maybe not to bag on them too hard, but that's like an
well, yeah,
example.
it's just like that's not like the goal of
Yeah.
any team. And people think that making EPL is like it, and that's just not. Like you want to be one of the best teams in the world, and that just gives you an opportunity to go there and show yourself on a stage. And like I said, if we can win a couple games, then maybe we get invited to some lands. Maybe when DreamHacks come around, then we can start to go to some DreamHacks and maneuver our way up, and then become a top 20 team. And that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's another great point. And I think T Weiss actually had a series of tweets that he made kind of recently about the same sort of phenomena that you're talking about, but talking about going from advanced to premier. In either case, right? You're absolutely right. Like the end goal is not making the next league, right? The end goal is making the next league and staying there. That's the hard part. And of course, like making the league itself is hard. But like again, if you put in all this effort to make the next league, and then you just go, make the next league, edit Twitter profile, premier, semi-professional premier CSGO player, and then you get banged out in the next season of Premier, and you're all the way back in advance, and your team dies, so now you're back to open. Like it doesn't matter. So that's like another great like mentality call out of like the way that people should be thinking about these things versus how it seems that a lot of players do. And just to go back to what you were talking about how like on Triumph you guys didn't seem to mesh well. I mean that definitely jives with some of the statements that we saw coming from like MOTM about like oh just wish I could like play with like my BFFs again and everything is happy rainbows and hearts and everything. How much importance do you put on like that out of the server meshing or friendship sort of a thing as like really impacting what happens in the server?
I think that chemistry is a super important part of any team in order to be successful. I think a lot of it too, because we're online and a lot of teams in NA are, we don't have the chance to be in a team house, or we don't have the chance to go to facilities and boot camp. And so I think that chemistry is kind of the thing that can tie your team together and take you to that next level, because when you have arguments, people view them as a lot more, okay, we're having this argument because we're making the team better. We're not having this argument because this player has an issue with me personally. Or again, just like the ability to talk to your teammate and be like, I need you to fix this, or I need you to work on this outside of practice, or, let's go and do these things together right now. And that they're focusing on it and they're actually like paying attention. You guys are making strides, as opposed to, maybe when you're doing server time or something, people aren't fully focused. Like the chemistry is the stuff that allows you to elevate players individually to continue to put in the extra work and to continue to do the things that they need to do in order for your team to take that next level step, I guess.
Yeah. So do you feel that arguments or disagreements or whatever kind of tend to just be very uh, non-constructive in the case where like no one is has chemistry or meshing or doesn't assume good intent or whatever? Is that kind of what you're getting at or part of what you're talking about?
It can lead to a lot of like resentment that gets built up. So I think that a big issue that we have is that like a lot of times teammates will have like you'll argue about things, but at the end of the day, things won't get solved. And I think that that's like a very EU thing that they have that we don't. Is I think people are way more direct with each other, and the conflicts get resolved a lot faster. I think in NA, a lot of teams will have arguments or they'll have things, and then that leads to resentment, and then that will end up creating bridges that will not get solved or become like unrepairable when it could have easily been fixed if you had sat down and had a conversation, or just I don't know, a lot of things. And I think that that's a big reason that you look at NA and that there not being as much roster stability as there is within the like T2 EU scene.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely jives.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So obviously, at the end of your Triumph era, you actually make the wrestling heel move to go over to Bad News Bears, who, as we alluded to earlier, actually robbed you or denied you guys of your pro league spot. So was that like kind of your version of FNS 5D chess? You were like, yeah, like Bad News Bears are gonna beat us, and then it's okay. Like I can totally go join them anytime. Like no problem. I'm kidding, obviously. That's not. I don't want E6 to be knocking on your door as soon as this goes live. But as you kind of, I guess, knew the Triumph project, or at least your time in the Triumph project was coming to an end, what were the options that you were evaluating?
I actually didn't have any options when I decided to leave Triumph. I didn't have anything on the board or get anything firm. I kind of figured that I would go back to school in August and play part time and just kind of keep my form up and see what happened. But BNB ended up messaging me that night, and I pretty much told them like, sure, if nothing else, crazy comes along, I'm more than happy to trial and play with you guys and see what comes of it.
Mhm.
I think it's
So I
been a
mean,
good decision so far.
yeah, well, I was gonna say, we're only about, 2 or so ish weeks into the Shakezullah era of Bad News Bears.
Mhm.
It's worked out pretty well. You played 2 cash cups. You are averaging 1.5 on the podium, and you guys are $13,000 richer in aggregate to show for it. So that's pretty good. How have those events gone from your perspective, inside the server?
I think they've been pretty good. From what I can tell, like I've fit into a lot of stuff because they have a very good core, and I think I have something that I've never really had before in the past in terms of like a strong secondary caller who isn't afraid to give their opinion. And so PTR and I kind of have a good dynamic where like we're not afraid to make mid round comms, or if I'm focused on my crosshair for a little bit, he might realize that and pick up the slack. So things are just constantly happening within the games, and I feel like a lot of times right now when we're losing, it's because we allow ourselves to get out of the game mentally, or we will make mistakes. So far, in the times that we've lost, I've never really felt like we've been outclassed or that we've been, beaten down to a point where like it was our fault. Like, or not our fault, but like most of the time when we're losing rounds, it's because we're making some kind of mistake, whether it's because I don't have a lot of chemistry with them yet, or like we just do something that doesn't make a lot of sense, or again, we're mentally out of it, so we're not communicating at an effective level. Then that's kind of where we find that we're losing our games right now.
Mhm. Um, let's just like take a brief moment to like talk about the pieces on Bad News Bears. Like, do you think that there's like what are the intrinsic qualities that you see of the players that are around you that help like make the team what they are? And like, do you think there's any anything further to unlock from these players, because all of them have been around the block before and are fairly well established, perhaps like with the exception of Swisher to a lesser degree, although we are huge fans of Swisher here at the show. So please, Michael, don't take that as a shot.
I pretty much just think that their experience is at a level that no other team really had in MDL. You know, when you look at Pete, he's obviously got tons of experience. He's played at a major. He's been played at multiple lands, and so he's not going to get flustered during games. He's always going to be very calm, and he has that ability to read the game at a high level where he knows how to fix things. And he's been through multiple callers and stuff like that, so he knows this is how we prove. This is the most effective way for us to have this conversation. And so again, there's just a lot of experience there. I think John G is one of the best players in NA that's not on a top team. The impact that he can provide in the server is immense, and he's really one of the only true entry fraggers that we have right now in the scene. So, when he's playing well, I mean, calling is so easy. I can just say, like, go here, and he gets 3 kills. And, I get to look smart when this guy's just absolutely tearing it up. So there's just, again, a lot of experience here. And I think that I can just add stability where I can unlock Pete and allow him to focus more on the game and make reads, because he's an operator that is very mobile and aggressive. And so if he's able to focus more on his crosshair, then he's able to impact the game with Janji. And if him and Janji are, popping off, then no team is going to have an easy time against us, because the amount of impact and the amount of in your face that they are is insane. So I'm just kind of here to provide that stability and to kind of make more calls and have more of a brain. I think that the reason they kind of brought me on was that Pete was really one of the only people that was like thinking on the previous team, and was one of the only people that was kind of leading. And so now we kind of have 2 minds that are thinking and bouncing ideas. And John definitely does a lot of the calling in game too. So we kind of have just like a trifecta of stuff where we're bouncing ideas, and I have a lot more attention to detail when it comes to stuff. Pete was very more like loose about how we're going to do things, and I kind of focus a lot more on the nitty gritty details, or like structuring things so that we're always adding things to our gameplay as opposed to running kind of the same stuff.
Cool. So looking forward to like the next 2 or 3 months coming up for Bad News Bears, obviously like outside of whatever cash cups or other qualifiers or ever come up, you guys are slated for the Cologne 2021 play-in, as well as the next iteration of Pro League. And I know that everyone is very excited about B&B merch, but what we don't have a hot preview or a drop or whatever the kids call it these days of the merch, but we are curious about kind of your boot camp plans, because I believe that is in the works for you guys. So yeah, tell us what the run up to, I guess, Cologne is going to look like for you guys, and how you're going to prep for that, generally speaking.
I mean, we're pretty much just going to do what we've been doing in NA, going up to Cologne, and then there's a player break right after Cologne. So the timing of these events is actually like really unfortunate, because we are going to come back after Cologne, and then I think we're going to go into EPL with like little to no practice. It depends like what group we're in, but we're going to try to either do a boot camp before, depending on what group we're in, or I think we're going to try to do boot camp after Cologne. So that's kind of the general idea of kind of, I don't know, just how things are going to go. One might be a little bit rough, and we were thinking about doing one between, because I think that there will be teams practicing still in EU. Like a lot of the T2 and T3 teams, I believe, still practice, but all the top teams wouldn't be playing. And then there was events that happened last year during the player break. I think they're technically not supposed to happen. And when I looked at HLTB, I didn't see anything that had been announced yet. But if there's the opportunity for us to go over there and win money and play at a lot of these, I think it's like gamble sponsored events for the most part that went on during
like
the thing.
snow stuff.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff like that went on. So
Or
we thought, like,
Sweet Spring.
if there was stuff that was announced, it might have been a lot more enticing for us to stay over there during the player break and practice and play those events. But I think we're just going to try to do something after Cologne now.
Yeah, I have to
after
imagine they're generally like over the player breaks or even the holidays, there are a couple of these events that will fill in the schedule, which is good, because what would we fill our time with if we were not watching Counter-Strike or playing Counter-Strike? Cole, was there anything you wanted to chime in there, or?
Well, yeah, I think the last time we talked, I know that was a major goal of yours, was to kind of get into EU, and I guess, yeah, you probably Cologne will be a tricky event, but you guys are playing in the play-in stage, so starting that one off, there's not much time in between your getting into EU and getting settled, but I guess afterwards, I'm more looking forward to seeing you all over there, and I'm glad that you finally gotten your chance to head over there and get a little bit of a break from North American scrims.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the lineup of teams that you'll be facing, even just in the play-in for Cologne, forget about if you make it to Cologne.
Hmm.
What are your feelings and emotions when you look at those teams there that you'll be up against?
We think a lot of teams are beatable. Obviously, we have not a ton of time here to prep and come in, but I think we're gonna try to just do kind of similar to what I did for NBL playoffs or Triumph, where we're gonna try to come in with a good game plan. We're gonna make sure that even if the stuff that we have on every map isn't extremely polished and refurbished or whatever, that we're gonna come in and bring in a game plan, and we're gonna be solid on that game plan. And as long as we can do, these guys are really dynamic too in the server. So if we want to change a couple things, then I think we'll be able to do that easily. But we're just going to make sure we do our prep on teams. We're going to make sure that we come in with a solid game plan, and that we know what we're going to do at the start of like every single game, win or lose pistol. The pistol round's going to be solid. Everybody knows the reactions and different things that we're going to do with it. So that's going to be kind of the goal of Cologne. Like I said, we think a lot of these teams are beatable, and then we think we have a good chance to qualify for Cologne.
So I want stickers. Want stickers. Um, cool. I think that about does it for our Europe portion of the proceedings. So let's focus back across the Atlantic to our near and dear home. And we've talked a little bit about kind of North American, or a lot about North American things and the state of North America. But like, really zooming into it now, I know you're a very learned and educated man, so I'm sure you keep abreast of the goings on. So just curious kind of what your thoughts are about, the state of Premier, even top advanced, recent qualifiers and all that stuff. I know you mentioned before that, obviously there's a bit of a dearth of true like top teams in North America, as we've seen lots and lots of players go over to the evil game, or teams staying in Europe for extended amount of time.
I mean, I think that the quality of the scene is definitely down right now. There's no denying that in terms of the overall practice is down because, a lot of top players have gone over to, as you would call it, the V game. But, it's just that these players get a new chance now. They get an opportunity to come up and play in Premier. And at the end of the day, the players that are hungry and the players that want it will, rise to the top, and the scene will be better in time. It's just going to be a while, it's going to be a while before events are happening in NA and teams can really get that practice. Or again, like it's just back when I think like North America 2015, 2016 or whatever, where it was like very dark times where we just weren't as good as the Europeans. It's just kind of the similar thing right now where players are just going to have to keep playing and grinding and figuring it out, and players are going to fill the spots of the players that left, and the level will be down for a little bit, but eventually it will rise. And like I said, people will start to come out, and whether it's one or two players on every team, they will start to come together and make new teams, and new players will come in and be competitive at the top. Like you look at teams like RBG, who a couple seasons ago were in advanced and struggling in advanced playoffs, and they're a very competitive team that is, making events in NA right now, and they may not be winning, but they're kind of competing at a good level against most of these teams, and they're not getting blown out. So as long as we continue to have teams like that, they will rise up in the scene and they will be fine.
Yeah, RBG, a team that kind of followed, the intact model that we were talking about earlier, right? A team that did well in advanced, and as we just recently talked about, they not only did well in advanced, they made it to MDL/Premier, and they stayed there, right? They were able to perform, right? So that really is the end goal for these teams. But that is somewhat of a rarity, unfortunately. Outside of like known quantities, so like perennial, top four of Premier MDL, what bright spots do you see in terms of teams or just individual players in North America right now?
I mean, I don't know. We're not really playing against most of the, like, I'd say the bottom MDL teams. I think that Third Impact is a team that's trying to stay together and do a lot of things. So I'd say that they're one of the more bright spots, because they've had kind of some roster longevity, and I think they're kind of in the RBGS type thing. But I think a lot of the lower teams are still kind of having the thing where they like cycle players in and out. I know that Censored's also trying to have a lot of roster stability and do their thing as well. So I think that, Swan is somebody that I used to play with, and I know that he's working really hard right now. I talk to him all the time, and I think that he can continue to do what he can do. Then, uh, he'll find himself, in MDL playoffs soon with a pretty suitable team. So again, it's just about players that are working hard right now, and again, that roster stability is really huge. So any team that wants to invest and start that, today is going to be far ahead of teams, 3 to 6 months from now who continue to cycle players.
Yeah, Swan is like another interesting case study of a player kind of similar to yourself, who I know has put a lot of importance into his education and schooling. And CS is something that he's done, kind of I guess on the side, right? But he's stepped away from the game, a few times to focus on school and everything like that. So, I definitely applaud you guys for being able to multitask and focus on these two very intense, endeavors for extended periods of time. And our last topic here, or at least our last pre-canned topic that we have here, is you mentioned it may be a while before we have events in North America again. Well, think again, because our boy Sasquatch is there for you to bring a whole bunch of Fragadelphia events to North America this year. So I'm assuming that you've seen that announcement, or at least the trailer. What does that mean, like, to maybe not to you personally, but like to the scene as a whole, I would say.
Well, are the Frag events confirmed to be CSGO events? Do you know that? Because they tried to run the battalion before alongside CS. So is there any chance here that we're looking at a nice bait and it's going to be Valorant event?
If this was a bait, I will get on the 2-hour mega bus back to Philly, because I was there this weekend, and I will actually see Steve this time when his dog has not just been freshly neutered, and it will not be pretty. So
I mean,
Oh,
if
man.
Frag has the events, it'll be huge. I mean, there's no doubt about it, right? Like Frag was always the event that when you're coming up in the scene, it was just the event. It's the one where you can go and you can meet people and you can kind of, network and explore how good you really are as a team and get kind of just that LAN experience. Again, it's just when I was coming up in the scene, I would always watch. I remember watching Rise versus I don't remember the name, Onage or something, at 4 or 5 in the morning, grind
Oh
it
my
out in that
gosh.
BO5. Like I remember watching that distinctively in my room and just being like so hype about watching that event. And so just as an NA player, like Frag is everything. The only thing with it is that it's like 5 different events and then there's like a final main event. So I don't know how to work exactly. I know that NSG tried to run lands for a little bit where it was like a lot of the smaller events, and there's kind of the big ones. So I kind of think that only the main Frag event will be kind of like the big one that everybody will go to, and you'll just kind of see a lot of more of the local players at the Denver ones and the early Philly one, and I think there's like a Chicago one as well. So maybe just more like local players at the early ones. But if the main Frag event is anything like the main one that they would run in the past, then that's going to be a huge event. It's going to be hype, and there's going to be a lot of good teams there.
Yeah, so I mean, there will be actually like 2 events in Philadelphia, the main event one and then one of the earlier ones. So I think that we may have like 1.5 frag, like true pure frag events, and then the other ones, as you mentioned, probably like not going to draw people from all over, but still like details sparse on that front. So we'll see what they can do in terms of enticing teams to show up, and whether that's inviting teams or whatever the case may be. But I'm certainly looking forward to it. I was at that Fragadelphia where Rise and Onage were playing until 2 or 3 in the morning. I got on a bus immediately afterwards. I was dead tired and I worked the next day, and it stunk, but it was also amazing. Another fun memory I have of Frag 11 is so Ronin were there, I believe, at the time, and so Emode, Odorous, Maka, some other folks as well. And so Odorous was like underage at the time, like 16 17 or whatever, and Emode was like designated in charge person for Odorous. And so there was like one point, this is like midnight or 1 in the morning or whatever, and Emode just like comes into like it's a huge like warehouse, right? And I hear behind me like, where's Chad, I can't find it. And fortunately enough, I believe Chad was like asleep on a couch right in front of me. I was like, he's here, you're good, you have not failed in your duties. So all good. But
Oh man.
yeah, Frag is a special time and a special event in all of our hearts. And I thoroughly encourage anyone who is in the vicinity of any of these upcoming events to attend. And again, that is assuming that we're not talking about Battalion or
No
Fortnite
bait.
or Tetris events or whatever it is that people play these days. Cool. That is about all that we have for the run of show, Mr. Shakezullah. So, with that, are there any other burning topics or rants, raves, anything that you would like to talk about while we have you here? I know your time is precious.
No, I think I'm good. I don't think there's anything else. Looking
Any
at my camera.
shout outs, plugs, merch drops that you would like
Ooh.
to do while you might be here?
Yeah, follow Bad News Bears on Twitter. We're gonna be dropping some merch soon, and it's gonna be sick. Also follow us at Cologne and Pro League because we will not disappoint. NA, I got you, Joe.
Hell yeah.
Woohoo.
There's one more thing you should tell these people to do.
Follow Dust2US and make sure that you retweet and you comment on their articles because they do a lot for NACS, and you should not
Wow.
take them for granted.
You are invited back to every episode after this, my friend.
That's a paid ad read right there.
No money has changed hands. This is totally legit. I have not threatened him or anything. Cool. Well, that does it for us here on the Dust 2 US side of things. As always, thank you, Exner, for doing the little fiddly knobby things and making things look pretty. Even though I'm a computer science graduate, I could not figure out how to do this stuff to save my life. So I'm glad that we have you. And of course, thank you to our guest this time around, Alan Shakezullah Hardman of Bad News Bears. Everyone's eyes and support will be with you in Cologne and onwards. And best of luck as you continue to build this team up. Thanks for watching, everyone.